Welcome in, everybody. Ready to dive into the world of Bernard Bosanquet.
I am.
You might not know him, but trust me.
Yeah.
This guy was a big deal in philosophy back in the late 1800s and early 1900s.
Absolutely.
And get this, he wasn't just some ivory tower philosopher. He was out there working on social reform, tackling real-world problems. And you can really see how those experiences shaped his theories about logic, the absolute,
Yeah.
and even beauty. We're basing our deep dive on his entry in the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy.
Great source. It's really a deep dive itself.
Oh, it is. It is. It really gets into the nitty-gritty. So, to kick things off, let's talk about Bosanquet the man. This guy came from a family of high achievers. I mean, we're talking an admiral, a founder of the Charity Organization Society.
Wow.
Like, talk about overachievers.
Right.
His brother, Charles, was also key in getting the Charity Organization Society off the ground. And what's interesting about them, their focus wasn't just on handing out charity. They were really big on promoting self-sufficiency.
Yeah, that's pretty forward thinking for the time.
Way ahead of their time.
Absolutely.
It really shows you the intellectual environment that Bosanquet was raised in.
Definitely. And that commitment to social work really had a major impact on his philosophy.
Huge.
It's like he was bridging the gap between theoretical ideas and how do we use these in the real world?
Yeah, exactly. He didn't want to just theorize. He wanted to understand how philosophy could actually make a difference. And then there's that incredible story about him at Oxford. His teacher called him the best-equipped man of his generation. Can you imagine that kind of prayer?
Oh, the weight of those expectations. But it speaks volumes about his potential. Even back then, they knew he was going to do great things.
They knew it. Okay, so logic. For any philosopher, it's kind of like the bedrock, right?
Absolutely. Got to have that foundation.
Yeah. But Bosanquet, he didn't just see it as like a set of formal rules. He saw it as this spirit of totality, like this driving force behind everything we experience, connecting everything in a grand system.
Right.
How revolutionary was that at the time?
Oh, it was a major shift. It meant that to understand logic, you had to understand the world to see how everything fits together.
Whoa.
And this idea of interconnectedness, it pops up everywhere in his work, from metaphysics to even aesthetics.
So instead of getting bogged down in these isolated little propositions,
right,
he's like trying to put together this huge puzzle.
Exactly. And each piece of the puzzle is an experience.
Wow.
And logic, that's like the blueprint for the puzzle, the guide that helps you see the bigger picture.
And that leads us right into his idea of the absolute. This is where his idealism really takes center stage.
Oh, yeah. Here we go.
Buckle up, because this is a big one.
It is.
Bosanquet believed in this complete and total unity, like this self-contained whole that he called the absolute.
The ultimate reality.
And the kicker, he thought human consciousness was a link to this absolute. What are the implications of that for a philosopher?
Oh, it's a huge concept, and it sparked so much debate. But at its core, he was saying the absolute is like the bedrock of everything, a perfect unity behind all the stuff we see and experience.
So it's not just that we exist separately and observe this absolute, but that our very consciousness is somehow a part of it.
Exactly. We're not just individuals floating around. We're participants in something way bigger.
That's pretty mind-blowing.
It is. Now, of course, not everyone was on board with this idea. Some folks thought it downplayed the importance of individual experience.
Right.
But Bosanquet, he would argue that it actually does the opposite. It elevates individual experience by connecting it to something so much grander.
Gives it like a cosmic significance.
Exactly. Gives our lives a deeper meaning,
Yeah. Wow. Okay, so we've got this idea of interconnectedness, this absolute, this linking of our consciousness to something greater. Where do we go from here?
Well, to really understand Bosanquet, we have to delve into his work on logic, specifically his coherence theory of truth.
Ah, the coherence theory of truth. This is where things get really interesting, especially for those of us who are into philosophy. Because so many philosophers get hung up on that correspondence theory, right?
Yeah.
But Bosanquet, he was arguing that truth isn't about matching statements to some isolated facts. It's about how ideas fit together within a whole system of belief.
Exactly. He was challenging the traditional view, the idea that truth is a mirror reflecting reality. He was saying, no, it's more about how well the pieces fit together, how coherent the whole system is.
So it's not about matching up individual statements with facts out in the world, but about seeing how everything hangs together internally.
Precisely. He was basically saying that truth emerges from the relationships between ideas, not from their connection to isolated facts. It's about the big picture, not the individual pixels.
So for Bosanquet, a belief is true if it fits into this larger web of beliefs.
Exactly. And he believed that our understanding of the world, it's always evolving.
Yeah.
It's a constantly changing system of ideas. And the truth for him, that was in how well that system explains things and how consistent it is within itself.
Hmm. But how did that idea go over back then? Especially with other philosophers, like Bertrand Russell and G.E. Moore, the neo-realists. They weren't exactly fans of this whole idealist framework, were they?
No, they were pretty skeptical. They thought Bosanquet's system was a bit too abstract, too detached from the real world, the world we experience.
Right, right.
They wanted a more grounded approach, something tied to hard facts and observations. They were all about propositions matching up with what's actually out there, not just fitting together in some abstract system.
So it was a clash of titans, basically.
Oh, absolutely. A major philosophical showdown. You had the neo-realists challenging the whole idealist way of thinking, and that really helped pave the way for what we now call analytic philosophy.
And even though idealism might not be as trendy these days in philosophy, there's still something really compelling about this emphasis on interconnectedness, don't you think? Especially in the world we live in today, with all these big, complicated global issues.
Oh, absolutely. In a world grappling with things like climate change and globalization, being able to see how everything is linked, to think systemically, that's more important than ever.
Now, we talked earlier about how Bosanquet wasn't just an armchair philosopher.
Right.
He was out there doing social reform work, especially with the charity organization society.
Mm-hmm.
Given his philosophical ideas, it's kind of a fascinating intersection, isn't it?
It is, and it shows how his big ideas actually played out in the real world.
Yeah.
For Bosanquet, the state, it wasn't just a political thing. It was like this ethical idea, something that should be working for the common good and helping people develop good character.
So he wasn't just interested in giving people handouts.
No.
He wanted to create a society that helped people grow and make good choices.
Absolutely. His work with the Charity Organization Society, it was all about empowering people to take charge of their own lives, not just meeting their immediate needs.
Now, I have to ask, wasn't this approach to social reform a little bit controversial back then?
It was.
Especially compared to reformers like the Webbs who are pushing for more systemic changes.
Right. The Webbs, they believed in a more active role for the state in fixing social problems.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas Bosanquet, while he acknowledged the importance of social structures, he always emphasized individual responsibility and moral development as keys to real progress.
So for Bosanquet, it wasn't enough to change the system. You also had to change people from the inside out.
Exactly. He saw this interplay between personal responsibility and the role of the state.
It's interesting because this tension between individual responsibility and social structures, it's something we're still wrestling with today, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's a theme that pops up in so many of our current debates.
It's everywhere you look.
And what's valuable about Bosanquet's perspective, even though some might disagree with it, is that he reminds us that individual action and social change, they're not separate things. They're woven together.
Okay, so we've talked about logic and we've talked about social reform. But there's this whole other side to Bosanquet that I want to dive into. His work on aesthetics.
Oh, yes. His writings on art and beauty.
He wrote a ton about it.
He did.
And it seems like his ideas in this area are really closely tied to his overall philosophy.
Oh, they are. Because for Bosanquet, aesthetics wasn't just about, personal taste or what you happen to find pretty.
Right.
It was about understanding how art can actually reveal something deeper, the spiritual character of the world.
Spiritual character. Okay, now I'm really intrigued. How does that connect back to his ideas about the absolute and this interconnectedness of everything?
Well, he believed that art at its best can give us a glimpse into the underlying unity and harmony of reality. He saw it as a way of experiencing something he called the concrete universal, which is like seeing general principles and emotions embodied in real, tangible forms.
Okay, so he's saying that art can capture something universal, something that goes beyond just one person's experience, that it speaks to some deeper truth about the world.
Exactly. And he believed artists could do this by expressing what he called the spirit of totality. It's like they're able to capture the interconnectedness of things in a way that really resonates with us, whether we're looking at a painting or listening to a symphony.
So it all circles back, doesn't it?
It does.
To his ideas about logic and metaphysics.
It's like he's using art as another way to view this interconnected reality, this absolute he talks about.
It's fascinating. It really makes you think about the power of art to reveal something deeper, something true about the world.
It is. And that connection between aesthetics, ethics, and metaphysics, that's one of the defining characteristics of Bosanquet's thought. He saw beauty as a path to understanding truth and goodness, a way to experience the unity of the world and where we fit into it.
It makes me wonder, though, how does this view of art hold up in today's world, where so much of artistic expression is seen as subjective and individualistic?
That's a great question, and it raises some really interesting points about what art is and what it's for. While contemporary art might prioritize individual expression, I think there's still this sense that truly great art, it goes beyond the personal. It taps into something universal, something that connects us to something bigger than ourselves.
So even though art has changed so much since Bosanquet's time, his ideas about its power to reveal truth and connect us to a larger reality, they still resonate.
I think they do. The desire to find meaning and connection through art, that seems to be a core part of being human. And Bosanquet's work, it offers a way to understand how art can do that, how it can bridge the gap between us as individuals and the universal, the specific, and the whole.
This whole idea that art can reveal a deeper truth about the world is pretty powerful, especially when you think about how art can move us, inspire us, even challenge how we see things.
Absolutely. It speaks to the power of art to go beyond language and reason, to reach us on a deeper, more intuitive level.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about Bosanquet's contributions to logic, social reform, and aesthetics. But for someone who's just starting to learn about him, what would you say are the key takeaways? What makes his philosophy unique?
I'd say the most important thing to remember is that Bosanquet, he truly believed in the interconnectedness of everything. That ideal runs through all his work, from logic and ethics to politics and even art. For him, the world wasn't just a collection of random facts and individuals, it was one big unified whole, a living system where everything is connected and relies on each other.
So it's not just about understanding the individual parts, but about seeing how they all fit together.
Exactly, seeing the bigger picture. And this focus on interconnectedness, as we've seen, it has big implications for how we approach everything from social problems to art and creativity.
It really makes you wonder how this perspective could inform how we deal with some of the big challenges we face today, like climate change, political divisions, or the rapid pace of technological change.
It's a critical question, and I think Bosanquet's philosophy gives us a really useful framework for tackling these issues.
Yeah.
His work reminds us that we can't solve these problems in isolation. We have to look at them holistically, recognizing the complex relationships between what individuals do, how society is structured, and the natural world.
This idea of interconnectedness is definitely powerful. But wasn't there some tension in Bosanquet's thought between this emphasis on the whole and his belief in individual development and self-realization?
You're right, there was. And it's a tension that comes up in any philosophy that tries to balance the needs of the individual with the needs of the group.
Right.
For Bosanquet, the answer was in recognizing that individual fulfillment wasn't opposed to the common good. It was a vital part of it.
Ah, okay.
He believed that individuals could only reach their full potential in a society that promotes ethical behavior and a sense of shared purpose.
So it's about finding that sweet spot where individual growth and social progress work together, where people pursuing their own goals actually contribute to a better society for everyone.
Exactly. And that's a tricky balance to strike, one that requires us to carefully think about things like individual rights, social responsibilities, and what it means to work towards the common good.
And speaking of the common good, that's a term that gets thrown around a lot these days.
It does.
What did Bosanquet mean by it, and how did it shape his views on social and political life?
For Bosanquet, the common good wasn't just about adding up everyone's individual wants and desires.
Yeah.
It was something deeper, something that went beyond personal interests.
Okay.
It was about creating a society where everyone could thrive, not just materially, but morally and intellectually. A society where people felt a sense of shared purpose and responsibility towards each other.
So it's not just about economic success or political freedom, but about fostering a certain kind of ethical and intellectual environment where people can truly flourish, both as individuals and as a community.
That's a great way to put it. And this idea of the common good, it's still so relevant today as we grapple with issues of social justice, environmental sustainability, and how technology is shaping our lives.
It's amazing how these ideas that Bosanquet was wrestling with over 100 years ago are still so relevant to the challenges we face today. It really shows you the enduring power of philosophy to address these fundamental questions about what it means to be human and how we can create a good society.
It does, and even though his specific answers might not always apply directly to our current situation, his focus on interconnectedness, ethical development, and striving for the common good, those provide a really valuable framework for thinking about how to create a more just, sustainable, and fulfilling world.
It sounds like we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive into Bernard Bosanquet's world. We've explored his ideas about logic, social reform, and aesthetics, and we've seen how these ideas, even though they came from a specific historical context, still resonate with what we're dealing with today.
We have, and it's been a fascinating journey. I hope our listeners are starting to appreciate just how broad and deep Bosanquet's thinking was, and how relevant his ideas remain in our complex and interconnected world. And, this idea of interconnectedness, it actually plays a big role in his work on logic, especially his coherence theory of truth.
Ah, yes. The coherence theory of truth. This is where things get really juicy for us philosophy nerds. So many philosophers, they get so fixated on that correspondence theory, right?
Right.
But Bosanquet, he's like, nope. Truth isn't about matching statements to isolated facts. It's about how ideas all fit together within a whole system of beliefs.
Exactly. He was turning the traditional view on its head. Instead of seeing truth as a mirror reflecting reality, he saw it as this measure of how well all the pieces of a belief system fit together, how internally consistent and coherent the whole thing is.
So instead of trying to match up individual statements with some external reality, it's more about looking at the internal logic of the whole system.
Exactly. It's about the big picture, the overall coherence, not just isolated facts.
So for Bosanquet, a belief is true if it fits snugly into this larger web of beliefs.
You got it. And our understanding of the world, well, that's always evolving, always changing. It's a constantly developing system of interconnected ideas.
Right.
And the truth, for Bosanquet, lies in how well that system hangs together, how well it explains things.
That makes a lot of sense. But I'm curious, how did other philosophers react to this coherence theory? Guys like Bergson Russell and G.E. Moore, the neo-realists, they were pretty skeptical of this whole idealist framework, right?
Oh yeah, they weren't buying it. They thought Bosanquet's system was a bit too up in the clouds, too detached from actual lived experience.
Right.
They were all about grounding truth in hard, empirical evidence. They wanted propositions to correspond to observable facts, not just fit together nicely in some abstract system.
So this was a major philosophical clash of the titans.
It was a real showdown. You had the neorealists challenging the dominance of idealism, and their work actually helped pave the way for the rise of analytic philosophy as we know it.
It's wild how these philosophical debates from over a century ago can still shape the way we think about things today.
It really is.
But even though idealism might not be the hottest trend in philosophy these days, there's still something really compelling about Bosanquet's emphasis on interconnectedness, especially in the world we live in. What do you think?
Oh, I absolutely agree. In a world grappling with complex challenges like climate change, globalization, social inequality, being able to see the connections, to think systemically, that's more crucial than ever.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit here. We talked earlier about how Bosanquet wasn't just an armchair philosopher. He was actively involved in social reform, particularly through his work with the Charity Organization Society. Given his philosophical leanings, it's a pretty fascinating intersection.
It really is. It shows how his abstract ideas had real-world implications. For Bosanquet, the state wasn't just a political entity. It was this ethical idea, a tool for promoting the common good and helping cultivate good character in individuals.
So it wasn't just about giving handouts to the poor. It was about building a society that supported individual growth and encouraged ethical behavior.
Exactly. His work with the Charity Organization Society was all about empowering people to take control of their own lives, not just alleviating their immediate needs.
But wasn't his approach to social reform a bit controversial, especially compared to other reformers at the time, like the Webbs, who were advocating for more systemic change?
Oh, absolutely. The Webbs, they believed in a much more active role for the government in solving social problems. Whereas Bosanquet, while he recognized the importance of social structures, he always emphasized the role of individual agency and moral development as key drivers of progress.
So for Bosanquet, it wasn't enough to just change the system. You had to change people, too, right? Like change them from the inside out.
Precisely. He saw this delicate interplay between individual responsibility and the role of the state.
It's interesting, this tension between individual responsibility and social structures, it feels so relevant today. It seems like it's at the heart of so many of our current political and social debates.
It really is. And what I find valuable about Bosanquet's perspective, even though it might be controversial, is that it reminds us that individual action and social change, they're not mutually exclusive. They're deeply intertwined.
It's not an either-or situation.
Exactly.
Okay, now I want to shift gears again and dive into another fascinating aspect of Bosanquet's work. His contributions to aesthetics. He wrote extensively about art and beauty, and it seems like his ideas in this area were deeply connected to his overall philosophy.
Oh, they absolutely were. For Bosanquet, aesthetics wasn't just about subjective taste or personal preference. It was about understanding how art reveals the spiritual character of the world.
Spiritual character, that's intriguing. How does that connect back to his ideas about the absolute and the interconnectedness of everything.
While he believed that art, in its highest form, could provide a glimpse into the underlying unity and coherence of reality. He called it experiencing the concrete universal, which is like seeing general principles and emotions embodied in real, tangible forms.
Okay, so he's suggesting that art can capture something universal, something that transcends individual experience and speaks to some deeper truth about the world. But how does that happen? How does a painting or a symphony achieve this?
For Bosanquet, it was about the artist's ability to express what he called the spirit of totality. It's like they're able to capture the interconnectedness of things in a way that really resonates with us, whether we're looking at a painting or listening to music.
So it all circles back, doesn't it, to his ideas about logic and metaphysics. It's like he's using art as another lens through which to view this interconnected reality, this absolute that he talks about.
Exactly. And this connection between aesthetics, ethics, and metaphysics, that's one of the hallmarks of Bosanquet's philosophy. He saw beauty as a pathway to understanding truth and goodness, a way to experience the unity of the world and our place within it.
It makes me wonder, though, how does this view of art hold up in today's world, where artistic expression is often seen as subjective and individualistic? Does Bosanquet's emphasis on the concrete universal still resonate?
That's a great question, and it raises some important points about what art is and what its purpose is. While contemporary art might prioritize individual expression, I think there's still this underlying sense that truly great art transcends the personal. It speaks to something universal, something that connects us to something bigger than ourselves.
So even though art has changed dramatically since Bosanquet's time, his ideas about its power to reveal truth and connect us to a larger reality, they might still be relevant today.
I believe so. That desire to find meaning and connection through art, it seems to be a fundamental part of being human, and Bosanquet's work provides a framework for understanding how art can do that, how it can bridge the gap between the individual and the universal, the specific and the whole.
It's fascinating how these ideas that were being debated over a century ago can still feel so relevant to the conversation we're having today. It really speaks to the enduring power of philosophy to address these fundamental questions about the human condition and the nature of a good society.
It truly does, and while his specific answers might not always translate directly to our current situation, his focus on interconnectedness, ethical development, and striving for the common good gives us a valuable framework for thinking about how we can create a more just, sustainable, and fulfilling world.
You know, it strikes me that Bosanquet's ideas really offer a unique perspective on the relationship between logic, ethics, and aesthetics. Like they're all woven together, aren't they?
They really are. He saw this deep connection between how we think, how we act, and how we experience beauty. For Bosanquet, logic wasn't just a tool for picking apart arguments, it was a way to understand the fundamental structure of reality. And that reality, it was both ethical and inherently beautiful.
So it's not just about thinking clearly, it's about living in a way that aligns with the logic of the universe, a universe that expresses itself through beauty. That's a pretty profound idea.
It is, and it's an idea that's inspired countless philosophers and artists throughout history. It challenges us to see the world as this unified whole, where our thoughts, actions, and experiences of beauty all contribute to this greater harmony.
Now, this idea of a unified whole, this absolute that Bosanquet talks about, it wasn't without its critics, right? How did he respond to those who thought his philosophy was too abstract, too detached from the messiness of everyday life?
He argued that the absolute, far from being some abstract concept, was actually the very foundation of all experience. It was the source of both our individuality and our interconnectedness. He believed that we could only truly understand ourselves and our place in the world by recognizing our connection to this larger reality.
So it's not about escaping the world, it's about seeing the world in a new way, a way that reveals the underlying unity beneath all the complexity.
Exactly. And I think this insight is particularly relevant for philosophers today, especially as we grapple with questions about meaning and purpose and value in a world that often feels fragmented and chaotic.
Speaking of relevance, Bosanquet's work on social reform seems especially timely right now, with all the discussions about social justice, inequality, and the role of government. How do you see his ideas contributing to these conversations?
Well, his work reminds us that social problems aren't just technical or economic issues, they're ethical issues too. He believed that a just society wasn't simply about distributing resources fairly, it was about creating a culture that encouraged ethical behavior, individual responsibility, and a sense of shared purpose.
So for Bosanquet, it's not just about changing laws and policies. It's about cultivating a certain kind of moral character, both individually and as a society.
You got it. And this emphasis on character development, I think it's something we often miss in our current discussions about social justice. We tend to focus on systemic issues, which are obviously important, but we sometimes forget about the importance of individual agency and moral responsibility in creating a better world.
It seems like he was trying to find a balance between individual action and social structures, recognizing that both are crucial for making real, lasting change.
Absolutely, and I think there's a lot we can learn from this nuanced perspective. It's not about picking sides in a debate between individual responsibility and systemic change. It's about understanding the complex ways in which they interact and influence each other.
It's a perspective that encourages us to look inward, to examine our own values and actions as we work to create a more just and equitable society.
It does, and it reminds us that social change isn't just a political project, it's a personal one too. It requires us to cultivate compassion, empathy, and a commitment to the common good.
Well, as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of Bernard Bosanquet, I'm struck by both the complexity and the relevance of his ideas. He was wrestling with these big questions about the nature of reality, the meaning of life, and the possibility of social progress. Questions that are just as important today as they were back then.
I agree. And his work, though it can be challenging at times, offers a treasure trove of insights. It encourages us to think deeply about how everything is connected, the importance of ethical development, and the power of beauty to illuminate our understanding of the world.
And for all the philosophy enthusiasts out there, I think the key takeaway is this. Don't underestimate Bosanquet. He was more than just an idealist philosopher. He was a social reformer, an esthetician, and a profound thinker who believed in the power of reason to transform individuals and societies.
Absolutely. His work is a powerful reminder that philosophy isn't just some abstract pursuit. It's a way of engaging with the world, wrestling with its complexities, and trying to make it a better place.
And on that note, we'll leave you with this final thought. As Bosanquet might say, the search for meaning and understanding is a journey, not a destination. So keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep connecting those dots. Who knows what amazing insights you might discover along the way.